Hey, deserving listeners, sister wives, my name is Dr. Kirk Honda. I'm a therapist and a professor. If you are a cast member on this show or any of the other shows that I watch, keep in mind that I'm only commenting on what's in the show. That does not mean that I know who you are. Really, I'm guessing 99% of one's personality is not presented on these shows. So, take what I'm saying with a grain of salt. Let's watch.
You cannot compare yourself or your situation or your relationship with any of your sister wives, because when you compare, you will never, ever be happy.
All right, so Janelle is talking about how another sister wives, Mary wasn't saying this, but anyway, they were talking about how when Cody is not with them, and they know that Cody is with another sister wife, they get up in their head about, Cody must be having a great time over there. He never has fun over here. And I'll say this again, I know I said this before, that this is, I'm guessing, a very patriarchal religious group. And one way to uphold the patriarchy is to elevate men in a variety of ways. Not only in the obvious way of they are special in that they have several wives, but also this limited time that they have available inherently makes them special. And, there's a little bit of worship or vying for his attention, whereas the women are numerous. Even in the religious group, I'm guessing there's a minority of men. And I speculated that if they are like other cults that are like this, they will, on purpose and subconsciously, excommunicate a lot more teenage boys than girls, because they need to in order to get the ratio right, so that you have the ability to have a lot of polygamous families. So there's that. But anyway, she's talking about how essentially they have FOMO, and and what Janelle is saying is, well, if you go down that road of comparison, it'll just ruin your life. Okay, another way of looking at that is that in order to survive in this configuration, you have to be in denial of reality. You have to shut yourself off from the knowledge of what's really happening in your life.
To me, I don't think Cody's very equal with his time. I think he caters to Robin's needs, to Robin's kids, to whatever Robin needs. And I think that he's spending all of his time building up his and Robin's relationship. And he doesn't realize that our relationship really isn't that great. And he needs to spend some time developing our relationship.
Okay, so the way they're editing it anyway is to contrast these two. I stopped on a bad frame there.
Two.
And so for Christine, she's saying that he's catering to Robin. And, that could be true. It might just be a perception of Christine's. And remember that for Christine, she wanted to be a third before she even met Cody. And for the past, I don't know how many years, something like 15 years, she has been the new girl in town, so to speak. And I don't know if that's what, that part of it was something that she liked about it, that she could think of herself as the new one, the sought after one or something. And now she's not. She's now not the young, and she expressed some grief, some loss around that. So it could be exaggerating things for her. But also, I just imagine that it wouldn't be unusual, right, for people in the the only reference I have is the polyamorous community, of which I've worked with a lot, and they have this whole, typically they talk about a concept called new relationship energy, or NRE, in which the reason why they talk about it a lot is it helps to frame experience so that people don't make bad choices. And it's well understood that when you have a polyamorous couple and they don't have anyone else in their life, but they're looking into starting relationships with other people, they meet someone and they and say this couple has been together for 10 years, and so they start, one of the members starts to date another person, and they click and they fall in love, and they have new relationship energy, and they want to spend all their time with this new person, and they're neglecting their primary or their other relationship. And to frame it around new relationship energy and all the principles, and you even know before you go into that dating situation that if things go well, you will click with someone and you're going to have new relationship energy. So when that happens, make sure you interpret it correctly, or at least more objectively than you would otherwise. Because what can happen if people aren't mindful of that is they can really harm a relationship that they don't want to harm. And then 2 years later, after the new relationship dies down, or 6 months later, they might look back and regret what they did. Meanwhile, the distance is really destructive, or even there's a breakup. And so this person who went through 6 months of new relationship energy is kicking themselves for giving in too much to their new relationship energy. So that's the only reference I have. And in polyamorous groups, there's various different interpretations of that and different practices, case by case. But the polycules that I worked with, there would be long conversations before you even started dating. There'd be like, hey, if you have new relationship energy with someone, that doesn't mean that you can just disappear for 6 out of 7 days. And if that's going to happen, then I don't want to go down that road, or understand that if that happens, I might break up with you. Or, hey, if you have, another approach is, hey, if you have NRE with someone, feel free to go for it, and me as well. But understand that I'm committed to you, and even if we take a temporary move away from each other, I'm still dedicated to being in a relationship with you, so don't worry or whatever. Or don't feel guilty if you veer away from me for a temporary period of time or whatever. There's a lot of talk and prep. I'm going to take a guess and say this family didn't have those conversations. I don't know. Also, I have a lot of questions, and as a family therapist, as a couple therapist, I would ask these questions as to what the expectations were, what the rules are. Does Robin understand those rules? Does Cody understand those rules? My impression was that he just rotated around, but what Christine is basically saying or indicating is that with the flexibility of, maybe Cody has like flexible time, and according to Christine, he's choosing to spend more time or maybe more energy with Robin, which again would just make sense. New relationships are typically a lot more energetic than otherwise. We seemingly evolved that mechanism to attract us to someone, to each other, so that we will, the idea, it's hard to know, and there's a lot of problems with evolutionary psychology, but it stands to reason, given certain patterns that we see in human behavior and coupling and sexuality, that we evolved a mechanism to, as adults, as post-pubescent humans, organisms, to be attracted to certain individuals, to want to gain their favor, to be very focused on them at similar regions in the brain that involve addiction, high motivation, obsessiveness, and then bonding and sexuality, procreation, and the bond and the focus and the obsession, the infatuation lasts long enough for conception to happen and birth to happen, and maybe for the infant to be 1 or 2 years old before that intensity starts to diminish somewhat. Of course, for a lot of us, it transforms into a different sort of love, or a more long-lasting love, a deeper love in some definitions, depending on how you're looking at it. But there's the 7-year itch theory, and I won't go down that road, but it's normal. So for Cody and for Robin, and I think maybe particularly for Robin, because I'm hearing hints, very minor hints, that she comes potentially from a pretty bad relationship, maybe abusive marriage in the past. And for her, this might be the first time in a long time, maybe the first time in her life that she's ever had a relationship where it's going semi-well and she feels safe. I don't know, but she could be pretty invested in a lot of energy. So how do they talk about it? Are they talking about it? There's a way in which this could work, in which they could all agree that, okay, for a time, Cody is going to be a little bit more interested in his new sister wife. That's totally normal. It's not the greatest, but we did invite this, because the sister wives, I can't tell, but there were some pretty overt statements that they wanted another sister wife. They wanted Cody to marry again, or at the very least, if it happens, it happens, and there was no statements otherwise around that. At least, consciously, that's what's going on for them. Who knows what's really happening for them on the whole? But if you're going to invite that, maybe even seek that out, then something's going to happen. It's not going to be. It's unreasonable to expect Cody and another woman to meet, fall in love, and have lust for each other and be very interested in each other, and have that just slot in completely seamlessly into the sister wife configuration. For Robin's, for Cody's focus on Robin to instantly be, attenuated to the level that he has for his previous sister wives, but because after 15 plus years or whatever with these other sister wives, it's less fiery, it's less infatuation. So, this expectation that it's going to be different. It's also possible that they don't really talk about love and lust in that way. Maybe they're not even supposed to. It's supposed to be more of like duty and doing what God wants, and therefore you need to make sure that you do these kinds of things to make sure that you spread your seed. Or I don't know. Maybe they just don't have that language. I don't know. My impression is that they are living. This just actually popped in my head. My impression is that these individuals are living in a, how do I put this? They're living in a model of lifestyle that they've been convinced by a group of people to be the way, and they don't, and the mechanisms in place that would typically keep everything in order are no longer around, meaning that 50 years ago, 100 years ago, polygamist groups such as the Mormon sect that I think they generate from, there would have just been high control and total patriarchy, or at least a lot more patriarchy, such that women wouldn't even think to complain because they might be smacked around, literally. So, because if you have a polygamous family, you're going to get emotions like this and reactions like this. And in the past, they would just be smacked around so that they would never want to even think these things, right? And it would keep order. Now they're living that sort of model, but the way that the women talk, they talk a lot more like modern women do. Not completely, of course, but they don't seem, particularly Christine, to be under the thumb of that much patriarchy. I'm guessing there's, I know that there's some, because there's always some in our society, but for every individual person, but I don't know where she is on the spectrum, but the way that she talks, and the way that Janelle talks sometimes, directly pushing back on Cody. Cody has, I didn't actually show this clip, but Janelle, they were having a conversation about their kids and youth group and stuff, and they will all explicitly agree that Cody is he's the one in charge, and if he puts his foot down, then everyone has to listen. They all agree on that. The women will say, yes, you're supposed to be the leader. Whether or not they really want that or not, I can't tell, but that's what they're saying. And then Cody put his foot down and he said, this is the way it's going to be. And Janelle said, well, I don't like that. And they had a little debate. And then Janelle basically said, okay, what I'm hearing is that she didn't use this word, but essentially she was saying, okay, so this is a dictatorship. And if so, then I guess I have to live with that, but I'm not going to like it. And then immediately, in terms of the edit, Cody relented. It's like, oh, no, okay, well, what do you want? And then Janelle was given space to talk, and she had sway and power. So that is, I'm guessing, not the way things were 100 years ago in this particular sect or a sect like this. So it's this weird mixture of eras where they're living this extremely old model that might depend on heavy patriarchy and community patriarchy and laws that basically identify women as having no more rights than a child would, so that all works. But these women now are like free to think and choose, and they're just like, there's something wrong here. This episode is sponsored by BetterHelp. So whether we're aware of it or not, we are often comparing ourselves to other people. Like, hey, that friend's marriage, it seems better than mine, or that friend is thinner than me. And these comparisons are natural, but when they become more intense, it's often due to an ongoing feeling of inadequacy. Of course, therapy can help with this. It's one of the easiest things to work on in therapy, really. These comparisons are often just below the surface, and when we take the time in therapy to investigate these automatic thoughts, we are given a chance to really look at these and change these patterns. Well, one place you can find a therapist is at BetterHelp. If you're thinking of starting therapy, it's definitely worth giving a try. So stop comparing and start focusing with BetterHelp. Visit betterhelp.com/Kirk today to get 10% off your first month. That's BetterHelp, HELP.com/Kirk.
I've never been here with Christine before. I've never had her be so troubled in our relationship. I've loved her all my life. We've had a great relationship. We're just at a point where we have to work through some kinks.
Love you. I'm just gonna go to bed.
I mean, just imagine this. Now, for polyamorous people, this is a lot easier, but still has its issues. But I'm just imagining for myself, it's weird to have this hypothetical, but how do I put this into my life? I don't want to use my life. Yeah, let's just use a hypothetical. You have someone and they fall in love and they're deeply in love, and the lust is there and the obsessiveness, the constant texting and just the electrical feeling you get when you touch someone. And then 75% of your time you're spending with your ex-partners, and you have to act like you're just as in love and in lust and infatuation with those three past partners. And they're all upset with you because you're totally interested in this new person. That's the analogy. And there doesn't seem to be any understanding, although it kind of seems like Mary and Janelle just understand a little bit more. They're just like, well, and maybe for them, they had to go through, this would be the first time Christine has had to deal with this, right? So maybe it's just a product of that. I don't know.
I'm not trying to put all of the blame on Cody or all the blame on Robin either. In fact, not a lot of blame on Robin at all, because she's phenomenal. She's wonderful. She sees.
Okay, that's interesting. So Christine is saying that Robin is amazing, because I do wonder And who knows if Christine's being honest, but at least that's what she's saying.
It doesn't really, does it?
No, making a big deal out of things sometimes makes them worse.
Now I'm at a point where I put a lot more of the responsibility on him than I used to. I think it just needs to be a choice. It just needs to be a choice that I make to just be happy again and to be okay again. Gosh, it's just harder than I thought it would be.
Yeah, interesting. Yeah, because from my memory, she was fully supportive, if not encouraging Cody to find another sister wife. And she's saying, I guess so there's two things there. One is sometimes that's a helpful attitude. And there's a lot of psychotherapy theory and psychological theory that I could talk about automatic thoughts and reframes and associations and cognitions and self-talk. There's a whole, and it's pretty well understood, I think, by society that your attitude depends on the kinds of things that you're repeatedly or automatically saying to yourself about a situation. You know, like you're about to do some gardening and it's not the best of weather and you don't really feel like it, but you know you have to do it, otherwise maybe all your plants are going to die if you don't. And so you're just kind of begrudgingly doing it. You know, everything feels bad. At a certain point, you're like, no, I want to do this. I like plants, and you know what? It's okay to be cold and getting my hands dirty. You know, and this is an enriching experience. I'm going to choose to be happy, and then it changes your attitude. It doesn't always work, but that is something that most people understand. Having gratitude has all sorts of shown empirical positive effects. It's a similar idea. I'm choosing to have gratitude. I'm choosing to be thankful. And there can be a lot of benefits to that. There's a whole field of positive psychology that's related to this anyway. On the other hand, if you are in an impossible situation and you have no way out and you are being tortured by your circumstances, and you're just telling yourself, I don't deserve to be happy. I need to just tell myself this is what I wanted and this is going to make me happy. That's something you're resorting to. It's not something that's actually fair to an individual.
It's where he wants it to be. Sometimes he's lucky, sometimes he's not.
See you later.
I don't really like not seeing him every day. I do like being alone. I like having my separate house. Love you.
See you later. Love you.
Love you. But it's an adjustment to get used to not seeing him every day.
Right. I hadn't thought of that. I mean, it's pretty obvious that for all of them, they used to see him every day, even though he would only sleep at night as a rotation, but they were all in the same house. So that's a change. And I wonder if Christine being upset about distance from Cody is at least partially, if not mostly, to that. You know, for Christine, she has Cody all the time, but only in her bed every third night, right? And then Robin comes in, and then they move at the same time. And now Christine goes from having him basically 95% of the time to only 25% of the time, and that change for her might be blamed on Robin or something. Because the other problem that I'm worried about is that, I don't know if I'm worried. I don't know what outcome I'm actually hoping for here. But a problem for their current configuration is that given how many changes, I mean, not only living in separate houses, but also moving away from Utah, they have been completely separated from their religious group, of which we saw no footage of, which I find to be interesting, actually. Were they ashamed of it? Does it make them look like freaks or something? I don't know. Because they had a religious group in Utah that they were a part of, that they saw in person and would worship together. And that's why they're having to do these home worships or something in Vegas. Anyway, so I wonder if all of those changes will be blamed on Robin because she's, you always have to have a scapegoat. Whenever there's tension, whenever there's lower differentiation, whenever there's conflict, there's always going to be a scapegoat. Sometimes it's not a person. Sometimes it's some outside element like the neighbors or the dog or something, or Donald Trump, or I don't know, some sort of politician, or whatever. Anyway, point is that there has to be a scapegoat. The intensity of it will go up if the differentiation is lower and the suffering is higher and the trauma from the past is higher and the lack of connection is higher. Anyway, because it could have a feedback loop problem in that if if somehow they were just able to add a wing to that house in Utah, they were able to stay there. Robin and her kids move into there. There would have been some bumps in the road, but they would have all been able to still have Cody 95% of the time, but Cody would just be rotating every fourth night into their beds, and then there would be a lot fewer changes, and the kids, because that's the other thing. All of the 13, 18, I don't know how many kids. So there's 13, 14, another 3, 17, 16 kids. They're all going through a lot too. So all the parents are stressed out about that, and I'm sure there's a lot of impact on them as parents of just like, now we got to deal with this stressed out kid and that problem, and I'm worried, and these cameras are on our face, and so all of those changes. So what I'm wondering is if in a parallel universe, if Robin had come in to the house, if the bumps in the road would have been easier to handle, and thus the equilibrium, the homeostasis is what the word that we use in my field, could have been reestablished fairly close to the old homeostasis. Whereas, all the changes that they went through, it'd be really hard to do that. And I'm hearing evidence possibly that for Christine, the lightning rod of her upsettedness is maybe going towards Robin. And the positive feedback loop could result in that for Cody, he could feel like, hey, you're not treating her fairly. He might also be biased because she's the new shiny thing, which is natural, I think. I've already been over that, but I'm not saying it's right. I'm just saying it would be totally expected whenever you fall in love with someone that you're going to be more interested in that person. That's typically how humans are designed. It doesn't mean that you have to follow your impulse and treat other people like shit, but anyway, it just makes me wonder if those little cracks in the system due to all the changes could actually compel Cody to use Robin as more of a refuge away from the stress, and then there is a reason to start to go after Cody and Robin, and then there's a feedback loop or something. I don't know. Probably won't happen because I don't know what I'm hoping for. But if we're going to hope for all 5 of them to stay together, then they made it through adding Christine, so adding Robin shouldn't be that hard. I'm guessing they'll get through it. All right, well, that does it for that episode. If you are an expert in a field that you think might be relevant to my audience, our audience here, feel free to email me via the website. Go to psychologyinseattle.com, click on the contact button, fill out the form. I'm always interested in, at the very least, having a small chat over email or something, but maybe even having you on the podcast. So if you're an expert on topics related to this show or other topics, or you're just an expert in psychology, I will sometimes talk to people, deserving listeners, and they will say what they do for a living, and I'll be, oh my God, you should be on the podcast. I mean, that's amazing. And they'll think, oh, I didn't know that was okay. Also, students, if you're working on a dissertation, I love talking with students about their dissertations because it's cutting edge research often. These are labors of love for doctoral students, and I love talking with those folks. Also, if it, maybe come on the podcast and talk about it. Two birds with one stone for myself, because I both get to have the enjoyment of talking with you, and we can share it with the listeners. I heard that it's not very kind to say two birds with one stone, and you're supposed to say two birds with one scone. I think that's how it goes, because you're attracting two birds with a scone, with one scone. Anyway, either way, take care of yourself, because you deserve it. You really, really do, even if you're a bird.